Our first reading today is from Matthew 6. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust consume, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust consumes, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will also be. In the second reading today, leading up to this reading for today, the disciples have been following Jesus, hearing his preaching and witnessing many miracles. In today's reading from Mark 8, the disciples are gradually beginning to understand who Jesus really is. Jesus went on with his disciples to the villages of Caesarea Philippi, and on the way he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" And they answered him, "John the Baptist, and others, Elijah, and still others, one of the prophets." And he asked them, "But who do you say that I am?" Peter answered him, "You are the Messiah." And he sternly ordered them not to tell anyone about him. He called the crowd with his disciples and said to them, If any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake and for the sake of the gospel will save it. For what will it profit them to gain the whole world and forfeit their life? Indeed, what can they give in return for their life? Those who are ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of them the Son of Man will also be ashamed when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels.
Would you join me in prayer? We are your children, gracious and generous God, and on this day we offer our lives to you as unfinished disciples. Give us the courage to follow in Christ's steps as we hear your word for our lives this day. Amen. A woman chatting with her next-door neighbor said, "You know, I feel really good today. I started out this morning with an act of unselfish generosity." "What did you do?" the neighbor asked. "I gave a $20 bill to a real bum." "Wow, that's a lot of money to give to a bum. What did your husband say?" Oh, he just took it and said, thank you. Yikes. Our theme for this year is the gifts of God. And today, as we kick off our stewardship campaign, we are focused on the gift of generosity. Now, when we speak of the gift of generosity, we are speaking of giving without expecting anything in return. And of course, as you heard this morning, there are a variety of ways that we can be generous. We can be generous with our time, we can be generous with our talents, and we can be generous with our treasures. Our treasures. Our treasures. And in our text from Matthew's Gospel, Jesus says, if you want to be one of my followers, then don't store up your treasures here on earth. Store your treasures up in heaven, because wherever your treasures are, there the desires of your heart will be. Now, as a child, whenever I heard the phrase store up treasures in heaven, it meant someone had performed a good deed, completed some act of kindness, or denied self for the good of someone else. And it would be said of them, they had just put another star in their heavenly crown. You know, one of the great things about those treasures in heaven that Matthew speaks of is they don't seem to cost us anything. But in Mark's Gospel, Jesus says, if you want to be one of my disciples, there is a cost. And the cost is this: you have to deny yourself and pick up a cross, which means those treasures in heaven do come with a cost. In truth, those treasures in heaven cost us everything. Because each and every day we live, each and every day we breathe, and each and every day we have our being and get to enjoy God's precious gift of life every day, the day's charge for the life we've been gifted by God to live is debited from our life's account. You know, I was watching a Today Show program several weeks ago, and there was an older ballet dancer, now a ballet teacher, who danced gracefully on the Today Show set. And Matt Lauer asked her if her body ached from her dancing at this age in her life. And she replied, of course my body aches. Aching bodies are the price we pay for the use of our bodies. And then she said, Matt, at the end of my life, I want to be able to say, not that I preserved my body so that it didn't ache, but rather that I used my body until I used it all up. None of us know how long our lives will be, but we do know this, that one day, involuntarily, the last penny of our lives will be spent. And I love the way the late Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple, put this very sentiment, and some of you have heard me say this. Steve Jobs said, if you live each and every day as if it was your last day, one day you are most certainly going to be right. So if we know that we're going to spend every penny in our life's account, wouldn't it be prudent for us to find life's real treasures to spend it on? And Mark points us to what those real treasures are when Jesus calls all who would hear him and challenges them to not be so focused on temporal things like money, fame, success, but on things eternal. And then Jesus invites those who would follow him to pay the cost following him demands, denying self and carrying a cross. And this is, of course, a problem for the disciples and, in truth, for each and every one of us. Because this isn't how we want life, especially our lives to unfold. Because we believe we deserve more than a cross to bear. And who here wants to deny themselves life's pleasures? Think about what we say. If you study hard, you'll get into a good college. If you get into a good college, you'll get a good job. If you get a good job, you'll make a lot of money. If you make a lot of money, you'll live happily ever after. And we say these things precisely because we believe life is, or at least ought to be, about what we can get, what we can grab, what we can acquire, what we can attain. But what if after getting all of the material things in life we want, it turns out our lives are still shallow, superficial, and empty? And we have lots of things, but we don't have meaningful lives. And we all know people who've acquired and attained all of the material things life offers and yet still live miserable lives. In one of my favorite poems that I learned in elementary school, titled Richard Cory by Edwin Arlington Robinson, Robinson writes, "Whenever Richard Cory went downtown, we people on the pavement looked at him. He was a gentleman from soul to crown, clean, favored, and imperially slim. And he was always quietly arrayed, and he was always human when he talked. Still, he fluttered pulses when he said, 'Good morning,' and he glittered when he walked. And he was rich, yes, richer than a king, and admirably schooled in every grace. In fine, we thought Richard Cory was everything to make us wish that we were in his place. So on we worked and waited for the light and went without the meat and cursed the bread. And Richard Cory, one calm summer night, went home and put a bullet through his head. What if after getting all of the material things in life we want, it turns out our lives are still shallow, superficial, and empty? So if we have, as the soap opera claims, just one life to live, wouldn't it be wise to spend it not on earthly treasures, but on what matters most, heavenly treasures? And so Jesus offers us an alternative. Jesus says those who want to save their lives must lose it, but those who lose their lives for my sake and the sake of the gospel will find it. But what does Jesus mean by that? Well, think about what it means to lose yourself in something. To lose yourself in something that so consumes you with passion, you can't think of anything else. Music, art, nature, politics, sports, a good book, a new love. And when we are consumed with passion about something, some cause, some person, well, I think you know what happens. Nothing else seems to matter. It's like when I'm with my grandchildren singing "Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream," or doing the hokey pokey and turning myself all around and saying that's what it's all about, and they are smiling with utter delight. Nothing else matters. In those moments, I'm not consumed or overwhelmed by any of life's concerns or cares. No, I recognize that there is more to life than me, that there is something greater than myself. And in those moments, I discover that I am more alive in the way God created me and wants me to live life. Because I recognize that where my treasures are, there the very desires of my heart are. Now, even as I share this with you, I want you to know that I am not trying to get you to focus on me. Because the truth is, as narrator would quickly tell you, I'm probably not the best model for what I'm talking about. But I do know something of what it means to lose self in service to others. And in those moments, I am more alive in ways I could never have envisioned but for God. Whenever we give to those in need of love, forgiveness, hope, help, each and every time we give of ourselves unselfishly for the sake of others, we are uplifted in our own lives and we experience the glory of God made manifest in Jesus Christ. And then we hear his words, those who want to save their lives must lose it. And those who are so self-focused on what's in it for them and whether or not they have everything they ever wanted and ever hoped to have will one day realize, OMG, oh my God, my time is up. And I'm still wondering, after all the getting and grabbing, acquiring and attaining, after all my so-called success and the life I sought, each and every day God gave me, I'm still wondering, is this all there is to life? And then the words of Jesus speaks with clarity. Those who are willing to lose their lives for my sake, and those who are willing to lose their lives for the sake of the gospel, those people will find the last thing they are thinking about is themselves, and will find themselves more fully alive than they ever imagined. So, how's it going for you? Someone will ask. And when you are storing your treasures in heaven, you'll be able to say, I don't know how it's going for me, but I know those benefiting from our day of giving are doing well. Someone will ask, how's it going for you? And you'll say, it's not about me, but I know those who are sick and can't seem to get well, those who are hungry and need a meal, those who are lonely and need a friend, those who are in prison and in need of a visit. I did something for them. I spoke up when someone was being excluded. I stood up when injustice arose. I gave of my treasures to bring hope to those without hope, and it made all the difference in their lives and mine. If you can say that, then you've found the real treasures of life. And that is what we would all like to find. And isn't that what we'd all like to know? That we found life's real treasures, and that we've given of ourselves in its pursuit. Jesus says, follow me, and I will show you how to give yourself in service, not to yourself, but to others. And then, to demonstrate exactly what he meant, how much he loved you and me, Jesus gives his life, literally takes up a cross, forgives those who took his life. I mean, what more could he have given? And now consider this. Since we are going to lose both our lives and all of our earthly treasures anyway, because we certainly can't take it with us, why not give our lives and our treasures to something that matters? And if giving of ourselves for others isn't the very gift of generosity, well, my sisters and brothers, then I just don't know what is. May the abundance of the gift of God's generosity be reflected in your lives every single day.